Hey everybody, Happy New Year. Bailey here. I haven't done one of these for a little bit. I've kind of forgotten how it goes. I know it's 5 o'clock somewhere, and that somewhere right now is right here in Madeira, Portugal. I have an espresso martini, perhaps my first of the season, of the new year. This is actually made with bourbon and maple syrup and decaf because some of us are getting a little old to drink caffeine after noon. So here's to learning new things about yourself in 2024. So good morning to my friends on the West Coast. Good midday to my friends on the East Coast. And to the rest of us anywhere else in the world, I hope you had a great new year and you're ready to tackle 2024. I know we sort of became hibernating slugs between Christmas and New Year's. I hope you were able to do that as well. We're finally back on track. It seems like from your emails that a lot of us are back at our computers, back organizing, and this is the perfect time of year to organize and think about what's to come. Hopefully you're getting a little rest and it's a quieter time of the year for you. Today we're going to talk about, what worked for you this year, what didn't work. What are you trying to do better next year? Who are you thankful for? I know that's maybe more of a Thanksgiving topic, but I'm thinking about that a lot. It's always a good time of the year for reflection. We're certainly thankful for all of you. If you've been around this flower farming thing for a while, you remember a time when there wasn't really great access to a lot of the best products in the world. And that's how we started our business. We were just looking for a lot of things that weren't available. And bit by bit, we've brought them to you. We brought them to us. It's not really a one-sided thing here. Obviously, I was a flower farmer myself for quite a long time, long enough to call the business Farmer Bailey, although this business has grown bigger than the farm ever did. So we're doing this full-time now. Anyway, we appreciate each and every one of you. We love the opportunity to help supply you and support you in what you're doing. And that's not going anywhere. We're going to keep on looking for new products and looking for new ways to support American flower growers. It's really exciting to see everything that you're doing. We love it when you tag us and things, really just so I can see what you're up to. I like to see how things are working or not working. Let's be honest, it's always good to talk about what isn't working. And is it something you're doing? Is it the product itself? Is it something weird with the climate? Obviously, it's often something weird with the climate these days, but we just have to roll with that. I don't think I've mentioned this yet, but as some of you have mentioned to me, when you're emailing and say, oh, I was 7B, but now I'm 8A. The USDA did change the zone map recently. So if you haven't looked at that, you might have observed it getting warmer over the last 10 years. I think it was a little, in the past, they would update the zone map every 10 years. I think it maybe took them 12 years to do it this time. And sure enough, a lot of people have increased their zone. So I encourage you to really keep track of the weather at your own property. You've heard me say this quite a few times. But also, if you're not quite sure what has been going on historically, well, look at the zone map now. It's based on what actual observed conditions in your area over the last decade or so. And that really might help you fine-tune your production. You might be able to grow some woodies, some perennials that you didn't think you could in your location. So let's hear from you today. I wish we could do a actual call-in show. That would be fun. But just send us a message in the comments or send us a direct message. What are you thankful for? What worked this year? What didn't work? What do you want to talk about? We're here to sort of talk and have a little community discussion today. I was looking at the website and there's a few things that you maybe have missed that are still available for spring shipping. There's one or two really nice varieties of the tissue culture Statice. Now I know those only went up for sale in December. We had a hard time getting our availability confirmed. A really nice clear pink. I think it'd be really, really make bouquets pop. Take a look at that one. On the woody plant side of things, we do have a restock coming probably on Friday. I've been in touch with all of our suppliers of the bare root perennials. We have some woody plants that are grown in America, and then the woody plants that are grown in Holland. They all kind of have to come together for us to ship them out. So I'm waiting for confirmation from all three. And I believe by Friday, we will be able to restock a lot of the peonies, some of the Astilbe, hydrangea, maybe some of the ilex, the winterberry holly. So go in there, and if you click on an item that says it's out of stock, a button will pop up, a big maroon button that says notify me when this is back in stock. Just enter your email address and you will get an email the instant that goes back into stock, and then you'll know that it's here. Another thing, we still have quite a good selection of our Hellebores, the Ice and Roses collection from Heuger, the best breeder of Hellebores in the world, in my opinion. These things establish really quickly. I'm excited for February, March, when more of you show us your photos of what your Hellebores look like this year, the ones you planted last year. You should be able to start harvesting this year from most of those plants. So I'm excited to really see what they're all about. Like I said, we do still have a really good selection. So if you missed out on Hellebores, don't think that just because we were out of some perennials, we're out of everything. There's still a nice selection of the Ice and Roses Hellebores. This is probably about our last Instagram Live. We may do some other, some informal check-ins like I'm doing today. As you might have heard me mention in the last couple, for some reason they took away my ability to share photos with you. And when I'm talking about new varieties, new products, the photo is really helpful. So since we can't do that anymore, we're looking at new options. So I'll actually be moving to a Zoom format, which is the last thing I thought I would ever say as one who just could not stand Zoom during COVID. But I admit that it's a really effective communication tool, and it's a community building tool, so we can actually have little breakout rooms, get together, get to know people in our own areas. So on the one hand, maybe 8-10 years ago, I was really gung-ho about Facebook because it really brought people together. Then I feel like it started to sort of separate people and be a place where people just came to fight. I think Zoom kind of went the other way. It started as a place where people wasted all your time on endless meetings, but now it's kind of calming down into a real place of community and a nice way to communicate and educate. So we're going to give that a good try. We're working on have more of a PowerPoint presentation, a better, more information for our time together. So February 7th will be our first Zoom meeting, and we're just going to do a classic all about Lisianthus presentation. If you see me speak at ASCFG about it, or there's, I think online, something I did for I don't know, it was University of Kentucky, or forgive me, I'm forgetting the exact organization, a group of Kentucky growers that share information. I did a meeting last year about Lisianthus. It'll be similar to that, but we'll have more updated information about new varieties. So we'll talk all about Lisianthus if you are trying to figure out Lisianthus. All right, I'm just gonna get a nice little bunch of questions here. Like I said, send us what worked for you, what didn't work for you, what are you thankful for this year, what are you hoping for yourself personally to get to do better next year. What we do is, it's a lot. You have to be a grower, you have to be a marketer, you have to be a salesperson, you have to be a designer sometimes. Anyway, here we go. So I got an email from Stephanie Chow in Santa Rosa, California, regarding Matilda Ptilotis. If you've tried Matilda, I'd like to hear if you've had it work for you. A lot of people are seeing it bloom short. The real reason it's blooming short probably is that it's going into the ground when it's a bit too cold. Matilda wants it hot, so order that one for midsummer. Even in June, you want your nights to be above 70. It's probably not going to work that well for people in the north unless you're okay with a 12-inch stem. But if you really want it to get tall, plant it into hot conditions and then keep it hot. Once it's established, then you can kind of cut the water way back. It's a Australian desert native, so it's really quite content with some really hot, dry conditions. All right. See, Stephanie also had a question about sage, just the Bergarten, the kind of classic culinary sage. It kind of all flopped in a big circle, and there's a kind of a dead center. Sage is another Mediterranean plant that likes a lot of heat. It doesn't need much water once it gets going. It's a true Mediterranean herb. And she said it might have been overwatering, and I think if you had a lot of water, that's what you were seeing with your sage. Too much water will make things get really soft and floppy and just fall on over. Okay, bear with me. I'm reading these as they come in. So here we go. A confetti flower farm. Someone who's in a 7B, 8A cusp, probably 8A these days. Been below freezing off and on for weeks, but their Snapdragons are still budding and they're getting a few blooms. So they decided to leave that bed alone. Should they cut them back, even though they're still budding up? This is a good question in the time of, climate change and unpredictable weather. My gut tells me you should go on and cut them back, because if they've been getting frozen, those buds aren't going to open beautifully. If they're already flowering, now maybe you do have a market for them now, but if you don't have a market until later in spring, I would probably cut them back to 4 or 6 nodes and let them resprout. That new growth should be a little harder, a little hardier than those flowering buds. That's a real problem with these temperature swings that a lot of people are seeing now. You get this kind of soft, tender growth that then freezes or has trouble adapting to the cold weather. So personally, I would cut them back unless they're looking really great and looks like you can get a harvest. If they're of concern, I would pinch them back and you'll get, rather than 1 tall stem, probably 4 or even 6 shorter stems, but will still be quite usable. Sassafras Flowers has some really good advice here. Planting more isn't always better. Refine and become really good at 5 things and nail them. Mediocre at 10 things does not cut it. Thank you, Sassafras Flowers. I try to preach that whenever I can. Like, you only have to grow one kind of thing to be a flower farmer, right? And most growers in the world are just growing one thing. Look at Holland, you might have a grower just growing roses for generations. They might just be growing red roses for generations. And they are very much flower farmers. So you don't have to grow everything. I think that's, once you get your core things that you really understand, try a new 1 or 2 every year. Start in a small patch on the side that your trials really understand what makes those flowers tick. And then, add them or delete as you see fit. Here in our property in Madeira, we're finally getting a little bit of cool, misty weather. We're down in the 50s at night, which probably sounds luxurious. And it's just nice to feel a little cozy. But we started a lot of ranunculus and anemones this year, and sweet peas, just for my own enjoyment and to fill the house with them. I gotta say, when I was growing ranunculus in Vermont, I put them in a tunnel. I crammed them so close together. I think I did 6 inches, sometimes a little bit tighter, just because I over-ordered and I wanted to cram them in. Well, I'm seeing now that I've given them twice the space, even 2.5 times the space. The plants are luxurious and they're spreading out. And I know I'm gonna get more flowers and better flowers by giving the plant what it actually wants rather than cramming it into my own system. So yeah, I'm gonna read this again. Planting more isn't always better. Refine and become really good at 5 things and nail them. Mediocre at 10 doesn't cut it and it doesn't help you. Great advice. Okay, Peak Season Floral says, every year I try to learn how to grow a few new to me varieties. My biggest learning curve was field-grown Lisianthus. This is one of the only flowers that this grower does not start from seed. It takes several months to get going, to be honest. Okay, I'm gonna summarize here. They tried from seed every year, wasn't working. They finally broke down and bought plugs. We're all familiar with the beautiful plugs that grow and sell and now Plug Connection are producing. And that made a lot of difference. So sometimes, it's not that you don't know how to grow Lisianthus, it's maybe you don't have the right conditions to grow the plug to a healthy transplantable size where it's really going to take off and do well for you. There's just some crops, stock is one that comes to mind. If there's ever a bad day in its entire life, you're not going to get the harvest you will if you can provide exactly what it wants every day of its life. Others, like a Zinnia, they're going to recover probably if they have a little bump in the road. Lisianthus are one of those that I think really prefers kind of perfection curated to its conditions all the time. Now, you may notice that most of the time when I'm giving flower advice, I really try to think like the plant. I think like the flower. Let's start with what the plant needs, what it's evolved over millennia to need. And is accustomed to in its environment, and how does that fit into your environment that you have to offer? Okay, Courtney Chastain says they need advice. I'm in 7B, last frost date April 8th, 8 to 10, give or take. The current earliest Lisianthus ship week is March 25th. Should I just wait until next year to grow these? That looks to me like you still have a week, 10 days of possible frost to receive Lisianthus. I think that's a great timing. You know, we usually say plant 2, 3, 4 weeks in advance of your last frost. You really just want some cold soil to plant those Lisianthus into. If you plant them into hot conditions, you know, where it's already in the 80s, you risk them rosetting. That's where the plant kind of goes into stress mode, makes this little ball of leaves instead of, you know, elongating and sending up that nice flower stem. So you haven't messed up too badly. I think you maybe could have planted a week earlier, but you're gonna be fine. I would go for that March 25th date. I will say that we, once again, will be having our, we did call it our available now. That was a little confusing sometimes because we have things that are available to order and things that are available to ship. So we're terming them ready to ship now just to make it a little clearer. We'll have a lot of those plants through weeks 8 through 18. So if you missed out on Fridays, we will post these things. If you have some gaps you need to fill in, we can give you all that information. There's a lot of information on the website about that. So if you do miss an ordering date, don't worry. There is a chance you can still get it, but you still have time. Most people would still be fine with a March 25th Lisianthus date. And for now, we still have good availability of ship weeks, but don't wait much longer. We'll start to see those disappear week by week by week. As you know, I'm sure you know, Lisianthus takes 12 or 13 weeks to produce as a plug. So time's a ticking. We need to be sowing. Growing Cell's been having really big sow weeks in the last couple weeks, getting ready for your weeks 8, 9, 10 shipments. All right, so Stone Oak Farm says, you know, what worked in 23? Scoop Scabiosa from Farmer Bailey plugs. I don't bother growing the seed Scabiosa anymore because the stems on the scoops are so superior. That's been my experience. That's part of why I was excited to bring these to American growers 4 or 5 years ago. Yes, and in side-by-side trials, I've always gotten better results from the scoops. There again, they want to be planted in the cool part of the year. The best harvest is going to be in early summer, late spring. But if you can let them establish in the cooler part of the year with shorter days, you'll get a better frame on that plant that'll put out really superior stems. If you see them starting to fizzle out, cut them back in midsummer. You probably see a nice flush in the autumn when things cool down. All right. Hey, thanks for the questions. There's a lot of good ones coming in, and keep them coming. I've got nowhere to be. I'm happy to talk about flowers any day, anytime, any place. Okay, someone bought Aralia this past fall. Is it a good flower? So we have had an Aralia called Sun King. And I believe Liz Krieg up in Vermont told me about Sun King, so I got some a few years back. It's a kind of chartreuse golden foliage. You can plant it in a bit of shade. It doesn't mind that at all. It is tough as nails. I had it live in Zone 3 Vermont. I feel like it would probably live almost in a tropical place as well. Has kind of a tropical look. The foliage just does last a really long time. I can't promise it's the best cut flower you'll ever grow, but if you have an event where you need some, you know, big, bold, almost tropical looking golden foliage, I think it's a really fun thing to work into arrangements. So good luck with that. We'll try to get more next year. We tend to sell out of that one fast, so we will get our orders in earlier so we can offer more of that to you next year. Pug Patch Flower Farm. I'm thankful for surviving my first year in business and for the success that I've had. Well, congratulations. I'm thankful for you for sharing that. It's not easy what we're doing. Anyone who tells you that it's easy is misleading you. There's a lot to think about. And then you also figure in weather and, you know, there's so many uncertainties in growing anything, be that in a garden or in a more commercial setting. So if you made it work, I say congratulations. You did your homework. You know, kind of write down what happened. If you didn't take notes all season, this is a great time to reflect. You know, look on your phone and see what you were photographing in certain times and weeks of the year. So if you know that you timed it correctly one year, you have a good baseline for what to do in the next year. Great. All right. Abundant Blooms Flower Farm asks, are there any lilacs in the future of your woody selection? That's a good question. I'm going to keep looking for them. I've been looking and haven't found a great source at a size that I can easily ship to you. They're often offered in larger sizes from the big commercial nurseries. But I do love lilacs, especially for northern growers. There's really nothing more lovely than a big armful of lilacs in the spring. So thanks for that reminder. We are still looking for more woodies. If we can find them, we'll get them on the website. Not terribly likely for 2024, but maybe for 2025. Feel free to send me an email with specific varieties or colors you're looking for. I have a hunch what would probably sell, but you may be looking for something different. So info@farmerbailey.com. We always love to hear what you are, what you're looking for, and be very specific if you can. That's great for us. All right. Elegant Designs by Joy says, Lisianthus, field or greenhouse? What do you think? In the field with a bit of shade cloth to prevent from rot. Okay. You can grow Lisianthus in the field. In my experience, the biggest concern with growing Lizzie in the field is if you're growing the big, roughly varieties with all the curly cues and twists and turns and have so many petals, they can really collect water very easily. That can either make the flower topple, or if you get a couple days of rain in a row, you'll start seeing some some rot down in the middle of the flower. So if you're going to grow outside, I like the simpler ones, even like ABC, Echo, Mariachi. They don't have so many ruffles to the petal. It's a little smoother petal so the water can travel right through. I find those hold up a little better in the field. Certainly the single flower types, we have these Solo and Viviana, which are small flowered, but you get a lot of flowers. There's a new Choco, the new Puccino series. Puccino Choco is one of the colors. Again, a small flowered, single petaled variety. Falda comes to mind as another single petaled. So I would put your maybe lighter, airier ones out in the field, and try to reserve, if you have tunnel space, put the big, roughly ones in the tunnel. You're always going to get better quality on Lisianthus growing in the tunnel. The conditions are just more moderated. You can plant a little earlier. You can adapt if you've got, bad weather coming. If you're going to plant in the field, I really do recommend using at least 2 layers of support netting. I know some people don't use support netting, and I don't know how they get away with it. But I definitely used to get 3 and 4 foot stems when I was growing in the tunnel. The Ranch Texas behind me says the arrangement behind you is gorgeous. So that's a collection of 3 different types of proteas. Proteas grow very well here in Madeira. We're fortunate to have some really established growers of proteas. And I'm looking at some narcissus and daffodils in front of me that we had a little New Year's party, and I've kind of filled the house with as many flowers as I could. So I agree. I appreciate the growers, the local growers here that produce them. Nibbles Farm says they grew baby's breath this year, but only got 1 harvest. Why? So, assuming you planted it this year, I think there's your answer. If you're planting out in the middle of spring, early summer, it's getting long days. It's triggering that plant to flower. It hasn't really had time to establish a big root system that would allow it to flower again and again. So if you got 1 harvest, great, you cut it back. Hopefully you left the plants in the ground. You should see probably 2 or 3 harvests next year, and you will get more stems per harvest. Now you can plant them and pinch them out and get a little more of a crown of growth points coming. But if you just planted them and let them go, it doesn't surprise me that you just got 1. They do need some time to establish. But if I had them over winter in Zone 3 Vermont in the past, they should be relatively hardy for most people, unless you're getting a lot of warm days, freezing days, warm days, freezing days. My good friend Anna Jane at Little State Flower Company says that she trialed 200 Gerberas, followed the growing guides exactly, and heard that they would do better in terms of stem count in their 2nd year. Yeah, that's true. Similarly to what I was just saying about the baby's breath, if you're planting things that are really itching to flower, they're kind of fighting. Do they put down roots? Do they make leaves? Do they put out the flower? So if you're getting a couple sporadic flowers, but the plant isn't looking great yet, it's probably just having a hard time figuring out where to put its carbohydrates. So in that situation, maybe with a new plant, you could pinch those first handful of flowers out, which kills you because you've been waiting so long to see them. But if you're pinching those buds out, then you're putting more energy into the roots and to the leaves. And Jane, I know we talked about it. Once you increased your feeding and watering, you started to see a lot more flowers. And I'm curious if you've hit the threshold of where they can take up those nutrients in water. It might be that more water and more food is what will keep them producing more flowers. Yeah, it could just be that they don't have quite the resources they need to put out as many flowers as we'd all like to see them produce. Can you see the rings in my eyes? My parents were here for Christmas, which was really nice. They gave me a ring light. I feel kind of like a teenage TikToker, so watch out for my dances. Blue Mills Farm, so they grew Lisianthus from seed and discovered they do best in humidity with heat. That's pretty true for a lot of things, especially to get them germinated. So they're going to start them in a greenhouse. Great. Yeah, obviously we sell Lisianthus plugs, but I always tell people to keep trying to grow from seed. We need more and better propagators. These skills, I don't say they're in risk of being lost, but they're not quite as common as they used to be. There are fewer professional horticulturists around than there were, when I was in university in the 90s. There were about 35 students in the horticulture program every year. And now most horticulture programs don't even exist. So good for you for trying. You figure out what works, keep fine-tuning it. This person also says they needed more filler flowers this year, so they have added those. So I think that's great. Look at what sold and what didn't. If you grow more of what sells and less of what didn't, it doesn't seem like a difficult choice to make. It always reminds me of a talk I had with someone who only sold bouquets, whereas at my farmer's market, I almost only sold like straight variety bunches or straight stems. I could always make a bouquet for someone, and they generally really liked being part of that process. And I felt comfortable making the bouquets in front of them, and it was a nice chance to talk to people. But this particular grower said, I can't just sell my flowers by the stem because they always buy all the focal flowers, and then I only have filler left. It's like, well, if you don't need to grow the filler, why are you growing filler? Grow more of the big focal flowers that people want to buy. So respond to your market. Grow more of what sells, less of what does not. That's really simple advice, but I think there's a lot of wisdom to that. All right. Someone is asking, they want to trade Zinnia plugs, 7B, what week should I order for? Your 7B just tells me how cold you get in winter. It doesn't tell me anything about your frost dates. So Zinnias are very frost tender. They want to go after your frost date. I would even push them 2 weeks after your frost date so your soil is getting nice and warm. They're going to do best if your soil is above 55 degrees. So your air temperature will probably need to be stopping in the 60s at night for your soil to get to that temperature. But Zinnias are definitely one of the heat lovers. Plant them at least a couple weeks after your chance of frost if you want them to really grow. You can plant them right after your theoretical last frost, but they're probably still going to sulk for a few weeks because they're going to put them in cold soil, and they're kind of a tropical plant that want a lot of warmth. All right. Let's see, someone in Zone 7, they want to order Snapdragons to bloom at the beginning of June. When should they order and plant? Again, Zone 7 only tells me how cold you get in winter, not about your frost dates. But in Zone 7, you're generally warm enough that you could have planted Snapdragons back in October. Week 38 or 40 is a great time. Zone 7 is sort of where it's safest to overwinter these hardy annuals outside. If you haven't planted them yet, then I would go on and get them February. That should probably work for you. And they'll probably flower beginning of June for you. I think that sounds reasonable. In Vermont, we would plant them in a tunnel around week 8, and we would have flowers mid-June, so you are in a little warmer place. If you plant February or so, I think you'll probably see flowers by June. Keep track of those planting dates and the harvest dates that correspond with them. And that'll really help you know for next year exactly when you can plant. All right, Stark blooms. The tissue culture status ships weeks 9 through 11. What do you recommend for a Zone 6A grower in New York? Pot up and keep protected into warm weather. So again, not knowing what your conditions are like in weeks 9 through 11, Statice really likes an extended cool period, 35, 40 degrees. They're really happy. Now these will have already been chilled. The growing cell is going to chill these plants for you. Part of why they're a little bit pricey, they come from tissue culture. And then there's a bit of nuance to how they produce them. They root them in the warm greenhouse, they move them to a cooler greenhouse to acclimate them, and then they're gonna put them into a cold situation for about 3 weeks to initiate buds. So Statice needs a cold period to initiate its flower. A little down to frosts, go down to 32, that's not of concern. I really wouldn't risk putting them through much colder than that, especially these tissue culture types that are so expensive. But keeping them cold in the 35 to 40 degree range is just going to really make them jump out of the ground with flowers once things do warm up. So I think any of those dates would work. Maybe, as long as you're not having brutal freezes in week 9, go on and get them for week 9 and give them a little bit extra chill. That's no problem for Statice. All right, couple questions here from Flower Power Daily. I'm going to have to plant 1,000 zinnias. What are your favorites? I don't know. I really like all those Queen Zinnias or Queeny Zinnias. I think they're actually called. We've all called them Queen forever, but I think the series is actually called Queeny. The lime reds and the lime blush and the lime orange. I really like all those kind of bicolors. Also, you can't go wrong with the good old fashioned Benary giant. Those are just really nothing bigger and rounder and fluffier has been produced. I also recommend, staggering succession plant your zinnias, because in most places you're going to get a few good weeks of harvest, and then they're going to start to look spotty and peter out a little bit. But if you plant them every couple weeks, you'll have a good harvest all year. Also, their lilac trees didn't bloom, no unusual conditions. Maybe they're old and maybe they should be replaced, they suggest. Without knowing your exact conditions, it's hard to say. If you don't see blooms any year, then it could be that they're not getting enough sun, they're not getting enough nutrients, maybe they are just kind of choking each other out. You could try cutting them way back and see if that works. But it's kind of a few too many variables for me to guess right here. Someone else's lilacs bloom 2 to 3 times a year because of the weird weather. There are some new ones. Bloomerang is one of the trade names of a series that does, it wants to bloom several times a year. But yeah, you will see that after a really hot spell. If you get, a hot, dry period, even in summer, followed by a cool, rainy period, sometimes that'll trigger spring things into flowering in the autumn. So we're seeing more and more of that each year, I think. Hard to count on, hard to replicate, but that does explain some of the erratic behavior we're seeing. All right. Confetti Flower Farm planted Snapdragons from us here in zone 7-8. Again, 7 is great. 8 is probably even better for overwintering hardy annuals. Planted in November with 4 other cold hardy plants, and they're all doing fantastic. These are in low tunnels with frost cloth when needed. Probably haven't needed it a whole lot, but as you're seeing more and more of these negative 20 degree snaps in warmer places in April, and it's just heartbreaking. So be ready, have that frost cloth handy if you need it, but no need to put it on unless you're really getting those cold snaps. Wild thistle flowers, is there a planting guide out there? Where do you plug in your first and last frost dates? Oh, is there one where you can just put in your frost dates and it calculates planting dates? That's a cool tool. I don't know that, I haven't seen one that is crop specific across all different crops. Sometimes there are a lot of other factors besides just your first and last frost date. Your day length, really comes into play. How cold you get in the winter can affect if you should plant in the autumn or in the spring. So it's really, if you find such a tool, let me know. I'd love to share it with everyone, or if someone knows of some kind of planting calculator that is foolproof, we'd be happy to share it. I think the problem is there's so many variables, and we're all working with slightly different conditions, that it's really, if someone's giving you a set in stone answer, here's how you do it, that's not going to work for everyone probably. Okay, Sharoni Kelly asks, can you go further into Gerbera daisies? How many stems could someone expect? Now in Holland, they grow them, well, very intensively. And most of their production targets are based on a square meter. So a square meter is really about a square yard, so roughly 3 by 3. You're probably going to fit about 6 plants in that area. And over the life of the plant, which can be a couple years, you may get 300, 400, or 500 stems from that kind of area. So you can do the math to figure out maybe over that couple year period, you're getting, 80 to 100 stems per plant of the larger flowered size. These little micro ones, you can probably get up to 100 or 200 stems per plant if they are really happy. You can't just pop them in your garden soil and stand back. Generally, they're grown in either an artificial media or, they deplete the soil really quickly. So even if you put them in a pro mix, it's essentially like you're growing them hydroponically. They rely on you for every drip of water and fertility that they consume. So we have some really good cultural information on these Gerberas. It's very technical. Take your time and dissect it, but we can really tell you what Gerberas need. But they're not foolproof. They are a little bit fussy. Yeah, I won't say that everyone's going to succeed with Gerberas, but I think they're a really fun project for people especially with a greenhouse, with a heated greenhouse, and with a little more technical skill in terms of providing more water and reliable fertility. Okay, hold on one second. I lost my place here. Thanks for your patience. All right, create, plant, enjoy. Hypericum, curious how it might do in zone 8B. I think it would be quite happy in zone 8B. I even had them overwinter in zone 3 Vermont with heavy snow. So heavy snow is going to be the real help there because the ground really didn't freeze much in Vermont despite it being so cold outside. If you live in a place with big fluctuations, have big piles of leaves ready or straw and throw them over those plants before it starts getting super cold. In 8B, you're probably not going to have to cover them too many times throughout the winter. They should be able to survive 8B just fine. I'm curious, I think we're about to send out a questionnaire for people who've grown Hypericum. We're curious to understand where they've worked, where they haven't. I've seen them growing beautifully in the Philadelphia area. I've seen them growing in the Pacific Northwest quite well. We have a grower in, I believe, kind of a zone 5-6 Indiana situation who is having good luck with them. So feel free to email us if you're doing really well with Hypericum. We want to understand better the hardiness of the plants we are selling. I'm sure it says on the website. So these are bred in Israel by a company called Danziger. Danziger is mostly supplying growers in Colombia, in Ecuador, in Kenya. These are all equatorial countries. So they're never seeing a frost, but they're growing up in the mountains. So it's cool. They can put up a very basic greenhouse and gain a few degrees of heat. They can cool it off at night. You can grow things very well in those kind of climates, which is why we see so much production in Kenya, Colombia, Ecuador, Ethiopia a bit too. But thus they haven't been tested everywhere. They're not really selling them as a hardy plant, although they happen to be hardy plants. So only by sharing this information with each other do we really establish how cold these can tolerate. So if you've had good luck, and you maybe think you're in more of an extreme place for Hypericum, let us know. We're really curious to see how it's working out for you. All right, Katahdin Farm, my Lisianthus from Farmer Bailey did great. Field grown in 9B. Is it possible to get a second flush if left in the ground over winter? So 9B tells me you have a mild winter, probably a hot summer, but there again, zones only tell me how cold your winter gets. If you have a hot, long summer, then I would imagine you could probably get 2 or 3 flushes in one season. The second flush is always going to be a bit shorter. I've never personally had a second flush of flowers because I've only grown Lisianthus in Vermont where the season was so short. I do know that there are people who treat them as perennials. In the wild, Lisianthus is a perennial. It will come back as long as it's not too cold in the wintertime. So I know growers in Virginia who used to very purposefully keep them for 2 and sometimes 3 years. I think the harvest quality went down in the second and third year. You start to individual plants died, the whole crop doesn't die, so I'm not sure it's the most effective use of your space to have lots of holes in your bed. But if they're looking good now and you haven't pulled them out, by all means leave them, because you might just get another good harvest in the springtime. Okay, Alfie Thorin says they've grown scoop scabiosas and love them. Are the focal scoops bigger? Yes, they are a bit bigger, maybe a centimeter larger by when everything is good. Now, if in the middle of summer, if it's getting kind of hot and dry, I think they're going to look fairly similar. But those first flowers in late spring, when the plant is just putting those resources into the first blooms, yes, I have observed them to be bigger and fuller than the regular scoops, which are bigger and fuller than seed-grown Scabiosa. So I think they are better, but maybe not infinitely better in my experience. All right. Meadow Wilds asking about Delphinium. Frost date, May 15th, zone 6B. Delphinium is plenty hardy to 6B, so you could plant in the fall. Do I want them in the greenhouse in early March? Just wondering how many weeks before they can be in the greenhouse before planting. If you really want early and excellent Delphinium, I would plant them in the greenhouse in October. Even into early November would be fine. You can even do them a little earlier. They're not going to flower on young plants right away. They'll sense that the day length is getting shorter and put out a big root system. If you were to grow them in your greenhouse starting in October should be plenty, and then leave your greenhouse open all winter, they'll just hang out there. They're very, very hardy. They like it colder than they like it warmer. But as soon as you close that greenhouse, they're going to come out of the ground ready to go. They are not day length sensitive. They will flower under short day conditions. So in the greenhouse, they're going to really rush to flower. You could go in and plant them now. You can plant them in March. And you'll probably see flowers in about 90 days. So it just kind of depends on when you want them. But for the best quality, I recommend fall planting for a spring harvest if you have the luxury of space to do that. You're not going to worry about them. Put them on your edge beds. Sometimes I try to keep more tender things away from the edges because they're going to perhaps get frozen. But Delphinium I wouldn't worry about even for a moment. They're tough as nails on the cold side of things. All right, Alchemy Farmhouse Blooms. I have Iceland poppy plugs planted into raised beds with 2 layers of row cover on the top, overwintering. Zone 6B, they should be perfectly hardy in Zone 6B. Hudson Valley, early May, last frost. How long should you leave the row cover on? I mean, I would try to keep it off anytime it's above freezing, and maybe pull it back on if it's going to drop below freezing. It might be a pain. But you don't want the row cover will trap a lot of heat in, and that can do more harm than good. So maybe you're cruising along at 35, maybe a little drop to 28, no problem for a poppy, and for a lot of other cold, hardy things, including Lisianthus. But under that cover, you can start, especially in March when the day length starts getting longer and the strength of the sun starts increasing, you can really get a microclimate where it starts getting 70, 80 degrees in that little strip under the frost cloth. Well, that will trigger the plant to start putting out tender new growth. Maybe it'll start bumping into that frost cloth. And then if you drop back into the 20s, then that's the growth that's going to turn brown. So I would probably keep them uncovered as much as I could, only covering when you're getting a really cold snap. Starting, right now the days are short, the light is low. I think once you start getting above 10 hours of day length, that's also when you start getting stronger daylight. That's when I would be really careful about venting so that you're not cooking those plants. Usually around the time your tulips come up, it's fine to uncover them. I always found that poppies naturally want to flower kind of right on the heels of outdoor tulips. So maybe use the emergence of tulips as your indicator. But I would try to keep them as cold as possible, as long as possible, so you aren't triggering flowers before they really want to flower. Okay, Powhatan Posey's Farm says, are Gomphrena and Celosia the same as Zinnias? Wait until the ground is warm and night air is above 60 degrees. I would say yes. Yeah, these are all plants from the tropical part of the world. They grow best when it's warm. Certainly above 55 at night, but if you can wait until the soil is 60 or better, they're going to keep growing immediately. you know, we're all kind of used to planting something and scratching our heads for a couple weeks. A lot of times you put these tropical heat-loving things into cold soil and they don't know what to do. They just sort of stop growing. And then it'll take them an additional couple weeks to recover from that. But if you hit it just right, get them into warm soil, they don't miss a beat, they just keep on growing. So good question. Yep, Gomphrena, Celosia, I would treat them the same as Zinnias. Ageratum falls into that category. We talked about Ptilotis a little bit. I would even try to go later than that. Wait until your soil is 70s. You know, it might be a crop that's best for people in the southern tier or more of a Mediterranean kind of climate. Another confetti flower farm question. In the heat of summer, are there any suggestions on keeping zinnia stems and leaves from contracting blight other than spacing for air, watering low, taking off lower leaves without chemicals? Yeah, bacterial diseases like leaf spots are generally related to water. You know, improving airflow is the best thing you can do to get your leaves dry again. So I think you've answered your own question. There's not a way to do this without spraying a lot of chemicals or really increasing the airflow around each plant. Sorry to not have a cure-all for you. I wish I did. Okay, Still Life Flower Farm, Connecticut says that Johnny's has a crop planning tool. Maybe that could help with some crops. I haven't checked that one out, but Johnny's is a great company. I've ordered seeds from them many times, but I haven't spent much time looking at the resources, which I hear are really top-notch. Okay, someone else has a favorite planting app called Sunseeker. There's a 3D feature that shows exactly how many hours of sun each bed gets per month of the year. That's cool. I guess I didn't say what I learned this year. So as you know, maybe you don't know, we were farming in Vermont, as I've said 100 times. And then last December, we moved to Madeira, Portugal. It's a tiny little island off the coast of Morocco, happens to be a part of Portugal. We're on the same latitude as Atlanta, as San Diego. So we do get a difference in day length throughout the year. So our shortest days are now, that's about 10 hours of day length. Our longest days in summer are 14 hours. Now in Vermont, we have much longer days, but we also have much shorter days in the wintertime. So lower fluctuation, but still a pretty good fluctuation. The temperature is very similar all year long. We get a little cooler now, but not by much. We're almost never above 80, really not much below 55. And yet things understand what season it is. We have red oak trees in our driveway. There's a beech tree out here. They all know when to drop their leaves, when to make new buds. We even have daffodils that flower on time in April, and I don't quite understand why. So I'm really understanding the power of day length is much stronger than we think it is. Even plants, think about campanula or some of these very day length sensitive things, or chrysanthemums on the other end. Campanula you plant early so it's ready to bloom once the days get long. Chrysanthemums you plant in the summer so they're ready to bloom when the days get short in the fall. I think almost every plant has some kind of day length mechanism built into it. And we don't often think about this a lot. I never thought about it growing up in New Hampshire and then Vermont. As a kid, I've been gardening for a long time, and you just plant it and you hope for the best. But there's really a lot of science about what's going on in that plant. So I think day length is a big thing that I'm learning about. I'm really learning every day that I don't know half of what I thought I knew about plants, which is really fun. As one who, I love being wrong. I love learning that I was incorrect and having a chance to think about things in a new way. So that's what I've learned this year, and I'm excited to keep honing those skills to do better as a grower in general. Okay, got a couple more questions here. I think this is okay about poppies. Should you just go on and rip off the cover now and wait to put it back on until it's mid-20s? Yeah, if you're going to be in the 30s or above, the poppy isn't going to care. They're from Iceland. They're pretty accustomed to cold temperatures. Don't take it from kind of a mild, cozy place directly into the low 20s. You might get a little burning. But if you're going to be mostly in the 30s and 40s, go on and take it off. They won't even notice. They're kind of in a semi-dormant state right now. Someone has some Color Me Mod Flower Farm. My tall fall planted phlox from Farmer Bailey is dead at the top. Is there a way to see if the plants are still alive? I would expect them to be dead right now at the top. They die back to the ground this time of year, especially if you've had some frosts. I would assume that if you were to dig down and pull a plant out, you would see there are some kind of dormant shoots just waiting for the trigger to start growing again. That'll be warmer conditions in the springtime. If you do that, you risk breaking the plant or damaging it. But I'm always the nosy one who's down there digging to see how things are doing. So I wouldn't worry about the fact that the top growth has died back. That's what herbaceous perennials do. So yeah, depends on how curious you are. I always would rather maybe sacrifice a plant to kind of see what's happening down there. Garden to table, can we see more dahlia varieties? I wish. I would love to have more dahlia varieties for you. We're talking about that, but it's can be a long process to bring a new product to market. All right. Unless we get a couple more questions, or we're going to wind up here. Good questions. Thanks for all your input. Your really nice conversation today. We have a new little feature. Our graphic designers made this nice ship week calendar on our website. We thought about sending it out to you, but we figure you probably are looking at your phone or your computer anyway. So you can download it directly from our website if you're not sure, what the ship week is. We try to put some of the major floral holidays on there as well, so you know the date that you were shooting for, if you're trying to plan a harvest. So that can just be downloaded for free. Use as you will. Also, you can turn on, I think the iPhone, you can turn your week numbers on your iPhone. So it'll just be in your iPhone calendar. Some years it's off. This year it is correct. So I think this year lines up with the calendar that the horticulture industry uses. So that's very helpful for those of us who go to our iPhones. Let's see, a question about Zoom. Our first Zoom meeting will be on February 7th. It's going to be an hour later than this meeting usually is. Don't worry, we'll post all about it on Instagram. I'm sure we'll send out an email as well. It's going to be a more developed kind of presentation, more of a PowerPoint kind of presentation where we really get into the nitty-gritty. And then also we'll be able to have some live questions from people. I think we might even do some breakout groups so people can understand, learn maybe who's growing near them, who has similar conditions. So you can compare notes about planting times, about harvest times, about what varieties are working best, in the field or in a tunnel. Like I say, we're not done with these forever, but since I can't show you photos, we're probably going to back away from this platform a little bit for the lives. We'll still be posting photos. Keep tagging us. It is a great communications tool. We do appreciate what Instagram can do for us in terms of sharing photos of our lives and our beautiful flowers. So keep on doing that. Okay, last question here. Pug Patch Flower Farm asks if there will be any more mock orange. I think we will have more mock orange, Philadelphus. So if you are, again, if you're looking for those woody plants, the bare root perennials, go in there and click that little, if it says it's sold out, you'll see a button that pops up that says notify me when back in stock. And that way we will have your email address and we'll let you know exactly when it goes back into stock. And you won't miss out that way, okay? All right, everyone. Thanks again. Happy New Year. Let us know if you have any questions. We're getting a lot of people planning their seasons, and we love this time of year to help you figure out the best approach to what you're doing. All right. Take care. Bye-bye.